introduction and the welcome. Um, in keeping with the tone and the respect for the Indigenous wisdom and perspective, let me begin with York University's acknowledgement of land and tradition. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been cared for by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It's now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. So, my thanks to RCE Saskatchewan co-chairs, Margaret Asmuth and Roger Petrie, for inviting me once again to take part in these award ceremonies. I can't believe it's number 14. But this approach to annually recognizing the many community initiatives that are happening to create a better Saskatchewan for all is really pretty unique in the RCE world, and I congratulate you. And I thank the sponsors as well as those who created, those of you who conducted these many projects. Congratulations to all the award winners. It is so impressive. Yeah. Thanks also to the Royal Saskatchewan Museum for hosting the awards ceremony this year. I really wish I could be there to take part in it. I've been to many of the previous award ceremonies, and I certainly have been through the museum on several occasions. I wish I could be there to actually see this wonderful exhibit on home life in the Anthropocene. Congratulations to Dr. Glenn Suter, Glenn. And I'm intrigued and looking forward to hearing this Songs for Nature program of the museum. I'm also so happy that we're now able to recognize two giants of the RCE Saskatchewan history, two of the key founders, with Lyle Benko and Garth Pickard, and for them to be remembered. I'll never forget Lyle's his way of engaging people. He would simply say, "I wonder if you," and you were automatically thinking. And then the other aspect of Lyle, who was when we would be trying to contact people, he said, "Oh, I'll give them a call. I know them." I really think that it was Lyle's knowing everyone who lives in Saskatchewan or whoever lived in Saskatchewan. That's part of the secret of the wonderful presence of RCE Saskatchewan and the success in establishing it. And the same too with Garth Pickard, his analogy of life being a canoe trip. Sometimes still waters, often rapids, and shooting them. And his saying, whenever of going to get resources or to get to move RCE Saskatchewan forward, he would always say, "Well, let me go poke the bear," and it still brings a smile to my face. So thank you for honoring these two giants. Now let me put up my my slides for today. And let me get on and sort of introduce things. If you So the exhibit today, Home Life in the Anthropocene, I'm sure when you go through it, the exhibit itself will undoubtedly explain the term Anthropocene and will delve into its origin and the concepts and so on that are behind it. Our work in the RCEs is more about the role of education, public awareness, understanding, and so on, and with a focus on sustainable development. So I've been asked to say a few words about ESD, or Education for Sustainable Development, in the Anthropocene. So so let me move on then and start with my first slide. The commonality, the link between it, is more around this idea of answering the global challenge of how we can collaboratively work together to create global systems, and that's plural, that on the one hand, it enables all of humanity to thrive equitably, but at the same time, make certain that the earth itself has the resilience to support all other life forms, and the capacity to support future generations. Now, this is a huge challenge that's going on, and our current solution is sustainable development. Right? It is development that meets the needs of the current generation without making it impossible for future generations. But inherent in that is that it should not just be about humans. And that's where I think the link through to the Anthropocene is, sorry. That's where this link through to the Anthropocene concern that humans as a species are making huge impact on the planet, and it may imperil the future of other forms of life and certainly future generations of human. So when you are going through the exhibit, you will probably see these concerns with population in places where it's exceeding the carrying capacity, and it's very hard to see if you're living on this last one and using marginal lands, you can see it. But when you are in the center of Toronto, Regina, Saskatoon, if you're in the city of Mumbai or Paris, you really don't see your ecological footprint and what it is that is doing. So these are some of the concerns that we have around human impact, which is sort of at the heart of this whole thing of the understanding human impact in the concept of the Anthropocene. Now, if you look at the diagrams on the right, it's hard to understand the scale and the carrying capacity of the planet. So I love this one from the National Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution that's showing planet Earth. That bubble, there are two bubbles if you look carefully, but the large bubble is the salt water. That's all the water in proportion on the planet of the Earth. And the tiny bubble is all of the fresh water, not only in lakes and rivers, but in the atmosphere, in the clouds and so on, and below ground. It is amazing for us to try and get some sort of sense of the overall fragility of the planet. And on the top, we're showing our different aspects to development, from the hunter-gatherer through to agricultural areas, the industrial area or era, and then through to our current era and where we are headed with all, for instance, in all computers hooked together, working and feeding back the information they think we need to know, and so on. The balance between us. So it's so important that we understand the impact of humans upon the planet. Even back in the 1970s, the first idea of looking at human impact, what causes it? How is it facilitated? What direction is it going on? All of these are extremely important things. And how can we even begin to measure this? So the idea then of its population size, it's the lifestyle of people, their affluence, it's the technology that they use. Do you use a wheelbarrow, or do you look at some of the huge earth movers from the oil sands? So it depends on the technology that we use. Then if we look at this in the impact around climate change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has come up with their formulas about impact and so on. And then also, if we look at the last one, it's population in its habitat. It's about technology, but it's about over time. Is it simply one incident, or how long does this go on for? How long do we think it's going to go on for? And in the whole thing, the idea of what is our concept of what is well-being, right? It's current well-being for all. And so it's sort of another take on the idea of affluence. And so these are aspects that I think will be very important as you go through it. But not only do we understand that there are impacts, but there are risks associated with these impacts. Every year, the World Economic Forum goes and it produces what it sees as the big global risks, and it puts it out in a landscape. Now, in 2020, their diagram showed that wherever the closest to the center was the most important, and the other things around the periphery was important, but not as much. So if we pick out two, they had climate change right in the center there, along with social instability and involuntary migration. On the outside was more around infectious diseases, right? But to show you how things change, the next year when it came out, now you see infectious diseases right up on the top. Now they changed their scale. The scale the next year showed across the bottom, the horizontal, was the likelihood of something happening. So on the left, little likelihood of it happening. To the right, where it was very likely. And the same with the vertical scale is impact. If it does happen, what would be the impact? So going from low to high. And you can see in that the highest impact and likelihood to happen up in the top right, still climate change, but now you have COVID and infectious diseases. All of these things are interrelated, and of course we need to understand why is it happening, how much is happening, how does it really address us, and that the idea of risks can change. So the study of impact, not only past, present, but on into the future, and likelihood of projecting this kind of Anthropocene behavior, human-centered behavior, is important. Now, usually we take three different approaches to dealing with it. And one of them is education, public awareness, and understanding. Right? What we refer to as ESD. Now, the first aspect of it is, yes, access and retention with quality education throughout one's entire life is important. Without a knowledgeable and informed society, we won't have any chance of proper development, right? But the second aspect is recognizing it's our most educated countries that are creating some of the greatest impacts upon the planet and creating some of the greatest threats. This concept of this world being here for us to use and to take advantage of, that it is a large part of our current education system is How can I thrive within the system that is here? So the second part is the need of reorienting existing education and training systems to create this more sustainable future. And at the heart of this all is having a knowledgeable general public awareness, understanding of the concept, understanding of what we're doing and what needs to be done. And where we do know how to do things better, how do we come up with training programs? There are three main aspects of what we try to do with impact and understanding it. One is prevention. How can we stop it from happening? The other is the idea of mitigation, reducing the impact in some way. And the third way, of course, is adaptation. How can we smoothly move into this new setting? So all of this is part of education for sustainable development. And the idea of the regional centers of expertise, of which we now have roughly 175 of these around the world, is to build this kind of community understanding and community action. Okay? It's important that it's not only about the understanding, but it's the willingness to act and having the skills and the knowledge of meaningful action, of getting things to either to prevent, to ameliorate, or to adapt in the way. So the idea that you're working on of bringing together, yes, the university, the school systems, the non-government organization, the museums, at the top, botanical gardens and so on, the forestry, and engaging all sectors of society and media, bringing people together to talk and to become more informed and to create actions that move forward. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals are the big overarching ones for the world, but it is so important to be thinking about how do we localize, how do we prioritize the actions that we have and work together collectively. And so what you are doing there in RCE Saskatchewan, these being your latest priorities in moving forward, and in seeing the acts and the projects that you've had underway, it is so encouraging and important. So, in the words of Morris Strong, Morris Strong was the father, really, of sustainable development, a wonderful Canadian, and who passed away just a couple of years ago. But in his words, every little act counts. Every little act counts. And today we saw many acts, and they certainly were not little. And so I thank you for all that you have been doing there in Saskatchewan under the name of RCE Saskatchewan. And my sincere congratulations to not only all the award winners, but also congratulations to RCE Saskatchewan itself, to the members and the people, Arlie and Kurt and many of the others. I should not mention any one, but many of you have been there from the beginning and continue to pour yourselves into making this a wonderful work. So thank you very much again for this opportunity. Congratulations to all, and miigwech.